This is St. John's Church, 7 o'clock on a Friday night. But why does a church have its lights on, especially at 7 o'clock on a Friday night? Why don't we go inside and find out? District Fencing, a fencing club run by Mark Delota, a certified fencing coach by the U.S. Fencing Coaches Association. In April of 2005, Mark decided to found a Sabre fencing school, which would operate upon the basic premise of fencing's for all, and bring the sport of fencing to the local community. Thus, Capital District Fencing School, aka CDFS, was established in Schenectady. Let's hear some words from Mark himself. Hello, my name is Aranzo, and today I am with Mark at Capital District Fencing Schools.
Good evening.
When did you decide to start fencing?
I began fencing when I was 13 in Poland. Then I grew up, and I stopped fencing because my family situation was not really very helpful. Then life events kept me away from fencing, and then I came back at the age of 50, which is 27 years ago. I resumed fencing again, so after a long break. When I began fencing was completely different. There was no electric saber. Fencers could cross their feet during advance along the strip. There were 5 judges judging every saber bout. Nowadays, it's completely different.
When you were younger, why did you start fencing?
I was attracted to it. I was attracted because of its speed, its requirement for quick reflexes, and also I was reading books about musketeers, and that was something which helped me to create an image of a successful fencer.
When you started fencing, there were 3 weapons, right? Epee, foil, and saber.
There were always 3 weapons: saber, foil, epee.
When you started,
I started with saber, and initially because I was tall, they wanted me to do epee, but I didn't like epee. It was too slow. Then they said, okay, not epee, then you do foil, because those days, this is how it was. I tried foil, and well, I didn't really like it too much. I was attracted to saber, and I wanted to do saber. So eventually, they stopped resisting. I mean, they means the coaches at club administration, and they said, okay, you want to do saber, you do saber. That's how I happened to be a saber fencer.
Would you recommend saber to new fencers?
I don't have recommendation based on just weapon because I like it. I think everybody should fence a weapon which fits a personality, for a lack of better expression. Some people would prefer quick action, quick decision, that would be saber. Some people would prefer slower action, concentration, more chest-like approach, and of course everything at a slower pace. That would be epee. Foil falls somewhere in between. It is not as fast as saber, but it can be, and also it's got elements which are representative of epee fencing requirements. And the method of fencing is more like epee, except target area is different. There is also a different set of rules which applies. So it's not that I would recommend upfront saber or foil or epee. I would talk to a person first, see what person looks. No, it's not wrong. It's wrong. It's not looks. How person reacts to certain events, and what person likes. Quick action, more, slower action, this kind of a consideration.
Does anyone else in your family fence?
No, my father was really very much interested in sports. As a matter of fact, he wanted to be a sport journalist. He took me to a saber event, and this is really what carved my interest in saber. I still remember those scenes from more than 65 years ago, their speed, their action, their flash attacks, and still in my head.
So you'd say fencing has played a pretty big role in your life?
It is my favorite sport. I like doing sailing. I was a sailor. And fencing is probably my most important hobby sport or pastime, most favorite pastime sport.
What would you say is your most fond memory from fencing these past years?
Every fencing event, every bout, it's a fun for me. I don't have any particularly memorized event, but of course, I fenced in a national level event and I took 6th place. And it was a pleasure. It was a pleasant thing to take a medal and be congratulated at the age of 50. It was veteran event, of course, not the youth fencer, not the senior group. It was veteran group, but nevertheless, it was an effort.
Have you gone to any tournaments before or after that?
Oh yes, I've been fencing in many events before, at the regional level, at the local level, and also I've been fencing many tournaments after. I have a bunch of medals in my bag.
When was the last time you went to a tournament?
Probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I had a significant surgery 2 years ago, and ever since I stopped fencing really in a competitive way, or even I don't fence at the club. I instruct, but I don't fence. As a result of the surgery, I found it a little bit difficult. I wish I would love to come back and keep fencing at least at the recreational level, but it's yet to be seen, it's yet to happen.
Have you suffered any injuries due to fencing?
No, none whatsoever, except insignificant small scratches. This was about it.
Never witnessed any big injuries either in your time?
Well, like in every sport, there is a possibility that one can get injured, but I would say not more than an average sport. Fencing, in my opinion, is a very safe sport. The safety precautions taken during the fencing event and the way fencers are protected, I think, offers pretty high level of safety. So yes, there were cases, there were injuries, but not necessarily during fencing itself. There were some injuries, say in a area which is not necessarily a strip area. Somebody was bending over to reach for a blade, didn't notice that blade is pointing out, and had blade poked in one's eye. That's very unpleasant.
Yeah.
I was not lost, by the way. Everything ended up with a happy end, but things happen. Mm-hmm. I don't see fencing any more dangerous to anybody than any average sport, certainly less than boxing.
You'd say that fencing is safer than boxing and football, sports like that, due to all the...
Well, because there is no physical impact on a body, like in boxing. Knocking out somebody means, taking him out of a conscientious action, out of conscience. It's a physical harm you have to create to win. By knockout, of course. Of course, you can win by points, but nevertheless, it's a contact sport. Fencing is a contact sport, but you do it with a steel rod and you do it with much lesser force. Many times you don't even know that you were touched because of layers of protective clothing.
What do you love the most about fencing?
Everything. It's an adrenaline which is flowing when you fence, and it's a very strong hormone. And that hormone of happiness, some people call it. Even when you lose, you feel like ecstatic because of adrenaline. And of course, it requires you to use your brain, your intellectual faculties. You have to be physically fit to fence. Although there is a wheelchair fencing, people who are in wheelchair, they fence too. So by saying you have to be fit to fence, you have to have, arms and upper body capable of doing what fencing is requiring you to do. That's about what it is.
Do you have a rule that you particularly disagree with in saber?
Do I have a rule? Well, fencing, it's a sport of convention. The rules were created trying to emulate real life events, which means, say, for example, attacker has priority of touch. If I am attacking first and you are defending, if we touch each other, attacker will get a point. And the thinking is that in real life, if you have sharp saber in your hand, and if you are attacking, the defender will try to either avoid attack or block your attack, rather than making his attack into your attack, which would amount to counter-attack, exposing himself to serious injury. So on this basis, counter-attack in fencing was given more value than attack itself. So if there is a contact between two fencers, one is attacker, one is defender, attacker will get a point. But this is very often misinterpreted on a strip, and I think this is a weak point where fencing rules could be misinterpreted or misjudging can take place. Unfortunately, that's part of fencing.
I'm not too keen on the different weapons in fencing, but is it foil or épée that has the rule where if you hit 2 touches, it's 2 points?
Yes, foil's rule call for 2 points if there are 2 touches, which means if 2 fencers go against each other and they hit themselves at the same time, 2 lights will come up on a scoring board. Each of them will get a point. In foil and a saber, judge has to determine who has priority of touch based on rules and based on what happened on the strip.
But do you feel like saber might be better if it had the rule that 2 touches equals 2 points or 0 points?
I never really gave too much of a thought to it. It would complicate saber. Saber is much faster, and maybe I should give some thoughts to it. And well, I didn't really analyze it. Why? Because there is not much I can change about it, and it's an international set of rules. There is an international fencing organization to which I have no access whatsoever. No matter what I think, they will create rules which they think are correct or most appropriate for fencing. So perhaps it would be better, but I can't say for sure.
Have you had a role model in fencing, perhaps like a person in your life, or maybe?
Honestly, yes. When I was very young, as I said, I started fencing very early in my life, and then I stopped. My role models were, by then, European and world champions. One of them was Polish, and one of them was Hungarian, one of them was French. Those were role models for me. Unfortunately, there was no internet by then. I couldn't watch on YouTube their bouts, so I have to look for film recordings, clips actually made during competitions, which sometimes were available to clubs, but not very often. So it was a rarity to see a fencing event on a film.
In your time of fencing saber, do you have a favorite or least favorite attack? Or move in general, so maybe...
Well, I don't have a favorite attack. My preferred attack is it's an attack with a feint. Since, I'm not very young, I'm 77. So my speed does not compare to your speed. So I have to use different tactics if I would like to perhaps not win with you, but perhaps to go, head to head with you. At least create some kind of a balanced bout. So my preferred form of attack is attack with feint.
Yep, it's right there.
It's a lunge, short step, lunge, and attack with feint. I use counter-attacks too. But again, in saber, counter-attacks are very risky, so I do it sporadically.
You have a least favorite move or attack?
At least? No, I don't have anything which is least. I think everything which works is good. If I fence somebody and I notice that certain action will not yield a result, I just discontinue doing it. Or it may happen that the judge doesn't like it. I perform attack and judge will nullify my attack for whatever reason, then I change it. But I don't have anything which I particularly dislike per se.
Do you have any sport hobbies outside of fencing? Or is fencing
Sailing was my another hobby. I did some regattas when I was in my 14s, 15s, 16s. Not very successful, but I liked it. It was very relaxing sport. Other than that, no. I was trying to fly gliders very early in my life.
You flew like gliders?
Gliders, yes. And I attended a course, glider course, and I didn't finish it.
You need like a...
So I did not get a certification which would allow me to fly solo flights.
How long have you been teaching fencing?
I opened the school in 2005, which is how many years ago? 15?
Roughly 20.
2005.
That wouldn't be 20. That'd be
almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
Almost. I like doing it. It's my second life. I need it to feel well. Okay. It's a very satisfying thing, especially if I see young people coming in, learning and growing into good fencers like yourself. It gives me satisfaction.
You would say that's your favorite part of being a teacher?
I don't have a favorite part of being a teacher. I like working with people, and I draw satisfaction if I see person progressing in the sport, learning, and not everybody is progressing. Some young people are coming here because their parents want them to, but they don't necessarily have much of an interest. And I can immediately feel this, So, but it is very rewarding to see somebody who's coming in, who's very interested in learning, and is learning, and then is progressing from regional level, from local level through regional, even national level. I had fencers who were fencing at the national level. And that's where satisfaction comes from.
Do you keep in contact with them?
Frankly speaking, one of them only. And the others, they go to college, they go and work somewhere in California, in Iowa, in Alabama, and they have no time to keep in touch. They set up families and they have their own life. So that's how it is. It's part of life. One has to be able to accept it.
Have you been having fun teaching though? It's been a...
Pardon me?
You've been having fun teaching, it's been a good experience?
It's a good experience, I like it, yes. Sometimes, you are tired and it's no longer fun, but it's an obligation. But altogether taken, yes, it's something which I wouldn't change for anything else.
Can you teach your favorite style, saber? Here?
I'm teaching saber, predominantly saber. I can teach foil too, but with much less enthusiasm.
You teach foil here? Is there anyone here that takes foil?
I gave some foil lessons. I was never any successful foil fencer per se. My primary weapon was saber, but I was trained in foil, and I can teach foil. I can teach fundamentals of foil, perhaps not necessarily high-level tactics, but I can teach foil fundamentals. Yes, and I did it actually to a couple of people here.
What do you think is a good age to get into fencing?
Good age? Well, I can say what we do here. We accept kids ages 8 and up. Why 8? Because over years I found that younger kids have problems with attention span. And simply, they could be trained, but it would require completely different methodology of teaching. And there was not enough kids in the age below 8 to create a separate class which could exist on its own. So what we do here, we merge all ages, and then we try to, work in a way which would be appropriate for every age group.
Maybe not so much for elementary schools, but in high schools and middle schools, do you think they should have more fencing?
Well, there are states, let's say New Jersey, where many high schools, if not all high schools, have fencing as a varsity sport. In Massachusetts, many schools have fencing as a varsity sport. Not all, but many. In New Jersey, it was to a point where my son, who was good saber fencer, and he was studying in one of the universities in New Jersey, he said, "Dad, if you come here, you will work 24 hours. There's so much work to do. Teaching schools, judging, private clubs, and everything else." In this area, it is less popular, but popularity is growing. Gradually, it's growing. I hope fencing will become a little bit more popular than it used to be 25 years ago.
Would you like to see it in schools in New York? Maybe not as serious as in New Jersey, but maybe more of the Massachusetts level where
I think it would be good. It would be good for everybody. It would be good for kids. It would be good for parents. You know, fencing requires discipline, mind discipline and physical discipline. And that's something good to instill in young individuals. And fencing is the way to do it. It also requires constant intellectual readiness during fencing. I noticed when I am tired and my brain doesn't work as intensely as it should, I can walk away because I will lose. So that's why I believe fencing would be a good sport in schools. However, historically we tried in a couple of schools and there was no interest.
What form did you try to introduce to schools, Saber?
What form?
Yeah.
Well, what we offered is we offered a fencing lessons for interested students. All what we needed is certain space available, like in a gym during certain hours, and then compensation for equipment and for coaching time. But school management had not developed any interest in this. There were various reasons we've been told, but net result was we did not succeed. No school in this area. Public school had fencing. Private schools, yes. LaSalle had fencing. Academy for Boys had fencing, on and off, and a couple of other places. But public schools did not.
If public schools started fencing, like let's just say they started doing saber fencing for friendly local competitions with other local schools, maybe like Albany, would you be interested in coaching if they reached out to you?
Well, I can't say whether I would be interested, but given my age and my health situation, I'm not sure that I would be able to do it myself. But I could definitely help to organize a system whereby some people could coach, people who had knowledge about it could coach, organize local events, inter-school events, fencing events, and just make it go. That's what I think we should be able to do. Not single-handedly, but I think I would find enough enthusiasts to participate in this.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience about fencing or CDFS?
Fencing is a fantastic sport. I encourage everybody at least to try it. And CDFS, well, we're here. Anybody who wishes to try is welcome to come over here and try it. And we try to make this place friendly to anybody who is interested in fencing. That's all I can offer.
All right, Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
The assistant coach who also provides lessons here, Kim Barang, is an amazing fencer and coach. She's always coming up with fun games for her students of all ages and has several stories. Yet she's a fairly new fencer with several medals. Let's go hear some of her stories. Also with Capital District Fencing, we have another teacher there, Kim. How are you today, Kim?
I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
When did you start fencing?
When I turned 58, so that was 12 years ago.
What made you start fencing so recently?
It was something I always wanted to do, but life circumstances didn't quite fit, so we had to wait.
What changed?
My kids grew up. Pretty much my kids grew up. The money got a little less stringent. My time schedule was a little less crazy. Plus I was now at that point self-employed, so I could set my hours and adjust them a little bit more instead of driving an hour each way to work and working 60 to 80 hours a week. I was working 60, 80 hours a week out of my house, so it made it a little easier. So, but that's pretty much what happened.
When you started fencing, out of the 3 weapons, what was your initial pick?
It has been saber the whole time. It suits my personality a little better than foil and epee.
How so?
People, if you read the hype and talk to folks, they'll tell you that fencing is physical chess. Epee and foil, that is true. Saber is more like physical checkers. It's more act, react, and less plotting your strategy 5, 6, 7 touches down the road. So it suits me a little better.
Would you say between epee and foil you have a least favorite?
Not really. It's all trying to poke people and not getting poked back, and it's all the same idea. It's just some are faster than others, some have more technical, or some are more tactical, others are more strategic. And saber is tactical, and epee and foil are strategic. That doesn't suit my personality quite as well.
Is there a difference between the 2 weapons?
The epee and foil?
Yeah.
There's subtle differences. An epee is significantly heavier than foil. The way they work with the wiring is different, but the main difference is actually between the 2 sports, or the 2 applications of the weapons. Epee is most like real dueling in that the entire body is a target. Also, you can have 2 touches. So each person, if they touch one another at the same time or closely in the same time, both will get a point or a touch. Foil is strictly a 1 point, what they call right-of-way weapon, and the target area is much, much smaller. It is the torso, not the arms, up to under the chin, and the purpose of the weapons and the sports are a little different. Again, epee replicates dueling more closely. Foil was the sport that was designed to teach you how to duel and not die. So it is a training weapon for epee. And that's what it was designed for in 1500s, a long time ago.
So you'd say saber is the real oddball of the 3 weapons?
Not really. Saber is also a designed off a dueling weapon. It was a different weapon though. It was the cavalry saber, which the story goes, and I don't know if this is true, but it sounds good. The story goes that the target area for saber is the waist and up. And that's because saber was a cavalry weapon. It's not the horse's fault that the idiots on their back is trying to kill each other. So out of sportsmanship, you don't try to hurt the horse, so you keep your target area waist and above. So it's a nice story. I don't know if it's true, but it fits.
Yeah.
So, and also saber, your target area is front and back, except for the back of the head, which is a safety issue. Again, saber for real is front or back. They don't care where you hit as long as you do injury. So from a dueling standpoint, the idea is if you hit your opponent, you hit him. So.
But you don't have a favorite or least favorite. But your favorite would be saber.
My favorite's the sabers again because it's more. I don't have the patience for epee and foil. I have patience, but not for that. So yeah, it's saber's faster categorically than the other 2. So that's kind of it.
How would you say fencing has changed your life?
I lost weight. It definitely kept me poorer for a long time because going to tournaments at the level I was going was getting very expensive. Other than that, it brought me back to sports, which I had left. I had been out of sports for a very long time. So it brought me back to sports.
What sports were you into before fencing?
In high school, I played field hockey. And did some archery, but primarily field hockey. And I would have played baseball, except that they didn't let women play baseball.
There was no softball.
Not in high school at that point. Women's sports in the 60s and early 70s were volleyball, field hockey, and swimming. I don't like to swim. I wasn't very good at volleyball, so field hockey it was. And when I was a kid, girls weren't allowed to play baseball. I was specifically told when I was 12 that I'd had the wrong plumbing and therefore could not play Little League with my brother and my dad, which didn't go over well, but that was the rules back then.
That sounds very...
Sexist?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah, it was. That changed when, by the time my youngest sister hit 6 and 7 years old, she was allowed to play Little League, but I was not. So, no, I wasn't happy because I was a damn good third baseman. And I have a wicked curveball.
In your time of fencing, what would you say is your most fond memory from tournaments or just being a teacher, stuff like that?
From the tournaments, it would be the camaraderie with a number of refs who are my friends and remain my friends, and coaches across the country and fellow fencers across the country. I have acquaintances and friends from San Diego to, I don't know in Florida anymore, San Diego, Illinois, New York City, all around the country, because it's the only way you can actually meet people like that, and it's very one-on-one. So fencing's a very individual sport. It's not a team sort of thing where you're hanging out with all your team buddies. This is, you hang out with the people you fence with, and so I'm very fond of a number of people from across the country. From teaching, it's fun for me as a teacher, not a coach, as a teacher, to have people enjoy the sport. You know, and some have said that they want to go on and compete. That's great. But the fact that they can do it and enjoy it, because fencing is unique, and I think over most sports, tennis is pretty close, but in fencing you can start at any age. My youngest students have been 5 and 6 years old. My oldest students in their 60s, and that's really cool. There's very few sports where you can actively participate and compete in such a wide age group.
In your time of going to tournaments, do you know how many medals or trophies you might have won?
Yeah, approximately 35, 40 local, and 13 or so national level.
So would you recommend for someone's first tournament that they go alone, or do they go to maybe a team event?
Alone. It doesn't matter. The team events are actually more complex in that how you set up your order of rotation. Just like a relay race, you have a sweep. You want to have a sweep, so in a team event, you want to have a sweep as well, what would be considered a sweep. What's different about a team event is you have a minimum, you have 3 competitors. You can rotate one in, but that's not really the point. Every team competitor fences every other team competitor on the other team. So it's a round robin where you fence, it's a permutation, 8 times, 6 times, whatever. So you fence every person on the other team, and every person on your team does the same. So it's about 9 events. And the way it works is the first 2 competitors fence to 5. Then the next 2 competitors fence. They fence to 10. So if you, if your team is down 5-0, and the next 2 people come up, you can turn that around to 10-5, and then to 15, then 30, then 35, 40, and the final is 45. So you can have a team with, you could consider a ringer on the team, and put that person last. Your team can be down 40 to whatever, technically 0. And if that person's good enough, fencing their last person, you can bring that score back and win 45-40.
Team events sound very entertaining.
They can be.
Yeah. When was the last tournament? When was the last time you went to a tournament?
The last tournament I was in was Capital Clash. No, I'm sorry. Is that true? It was either Capital Clash right before COVID, or it was Capital Clash right before COVID started. The one before that, and that was not a national level. That was a regional level. But the national level before that was the December North American Cup, otherwise called NAC, and I forget where it was. Probably someplace like Portland or Salt Lake City or something. I forget.
Have you suffered any injuries
Yes.
during fencing?
Yes, it's okay. It's not catastrophic. It was catastrophic when it happened. I have a detached tendon in my right elbow, and it's called the medial epicondyle tendon. It's the one that runs down the underside of your arm from here to here, and it is separated by a centimeter. At least it was a centimeter. I don't know what it is now. And it was torn and detached at the same time. It was not a fun day. That is an unusual injury for any fencing. Ruptured tendons in the arms are very unusual in fencing. You see it in boxing, on football, things like that, but you don't see it in fencing.
Did you just get cut to the arm when it happened?
I had failed to make a block or parry, hit the bone on my elbow, and it would have been better if it hit the funny bone, actually, but it actually hit the bone in the elbow where the tendon attaches, and that weakened it, and the doctors kept saying it was tendonitis, so they kept giving me cortisone shots, which then further weakened it. And at the New Jersey Senior Olympics, ironically, I was fencing a very, very wonderful fencer and friend named Delia Turner, and she did a cut to my side, and I blocked it, and the stars went off in my head, and I went and shook it off, and she did another cut to my side, and I blocked it again, and then I couldn't close my fingers, and I was done. So that was they eventually stabilized it, and it was a little hard to get the doctors to pay attention. I guess middle-aged women aren't something they care about. And when they finally did do the MRI, it was 3 days before I was scheduled to leave for a December NAC, North American Cup. And technically in Salt Lake City, actually. And they called me the day before, and he said, "Oh, by the way, the tendon is separated and torn." And I said, "Well, what do?" They said, "Tape it up." And so we did. And I fenced with athletic tape from my wrist up to around my elbow, and came in fourth.
Not bad for such an injury.
It wasn't bad. It didn't feel good, but it wasn't bad. And then basically learned to fence left-handed for 2 years. Then continued to compete left-handed. Didn't go quite as well. I get to hit people and not get yelled at. It's a challenge. It's probably, without a doubt, the most difficult sport I can think of, with the possible exception of polo, because in polo you have horses to deal with as well. It's a thinking game and a physical game, so and you've only got yourself to rely on. So it's not other
Blame teammates.
Huh? You cannot blame teammates. You can blame the refs, but you can't blame the teammates. So yeah.
Now, in your time of fencing, would you say much has changed?
The rules have changed a little bit. They keep flip-flopping back and forth on the timing. And the timing primarily deals with the amount of time between when first touch a person, an opponent, and when they cannot successfully touch you. It's called lockout. So a simultaneous touch, for example, that happens in the beginning of a bout, that lockout time hasn't elapsed. If you have a hit then hit situation, there's going to be a period of time, and then the counter hit does not count. That's called lockout. That time when I started is the same time it is now. They had shortened it at one point for a while, and now it's back up to where it was. The minute interpretation of the rules always changes, much to the frustration of coaches and referees and fencers. Is this right of way? Is this not right of way? That interpretation is constantly changing.
Did you have a role model before you started fencing or while you were fencing?
Before I started fencing, I didn't know anything about it. As far as role models, not really a role model, but a goal, that would be to beat Delia Turner or Jane Eyre. And when I was newer in my fencing career, those two lovely ladies were the best, and Jane remains the best in the world. So if I can play around and beat Jane, even when we're playing, I'm thrilled, because she's been world champion in the vet 60s 9 out of 10 years. Her first years in 70s, she's world champion, and her last year in 50s, she was world champion. You can't beat that. That's awesome. And to have that level of competence and stuff is just wonderful. So I could say she's my role model, but we don't fence the same way, so I can't do it that way. Just that she's my, not really idol, because she's also one of my dear friends. But she's my, she's the epitome, as far as I'm concerned, of that women's saber fencer. She's just wonderful, and she's a wonderful human being. So I would say anybody would be Jane.
Do you have a favorite move in saber?
I had early on, when I was really actively competing, I had an attack in the on-guard box that was pretty cool. And I could use it as an attack, or I could use it as a feint to get my opponents to react, and thereby stopping their attack, so I could just finish. Now I would have to say I like to bait my opponents into trying to counterattack so that I can hit them back, because I can do it fast enough that it negates their counterattack. And so that's kind of a favorite thing. That's a fun thing. It's just a tactic. So, but you've known that.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite part of teaching? Least favorite part of teaching?
Yeah, when I get the hugs from my kids after they've had fun. Well, the younger kids. You guys too, but the younger kids. When the youngsters have fun, when I get a hug at the end of the day, that's always the best. But that's a grandma part of me too. So.
Sorry. Do you have a least favorite part? Like students not wanting to learn or something like that? Yeah,
the least favorite part is when I have a student who doesn't want to be there, and I have in fact fired students. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't something I wanted to do or like to do. But in fact, this is the whole reason I didn't become a gym teacher in 1972 or 74. If you don't want to be there, I don't want to teach you. It's not fun for me. It's not fun for you. And I actually had a student who was part of a family group, and it was very clear he did not want to be there. I talked to Coach Mark and I explained my concerns, and he said, handle it, but let me see the email. And basically, I told the parents that it was clear to me that this young man didn't want to be there. He wasn't having a good time. It made my time very miserable, and it was affecting the family group that I was teaching. So at this point, I felt that it was better that he stopped coming and they stopped spending their money, because it was a waste of his time, my time, and their money. And I said it didn't apply to the other youngsters of the family group, but however they wanted to proceed was up to them. And I felt lousy about it, but I don't want to teach if you don't want to be there.
What made you want to start teaching?
It was a combination of money and fun. I was, at the time I started teaching, I was taking 2 private lessons a week, plus 2 group lessons a week, plus finding whatever tournaments or clinics I could attend. And that gets a little pricey. And it's fun, part of it's, like I said, it's fun. I like teaching youngsters. I like teaching people who like to learn. I am not the sort of teacher that is good for a competitive student, because I don't have the experience to do that. There is a big difference between a teacher and a coach. Coaching is a different mindset. And I don't have the experience for it, regardless of the fact that I've been teaching and fencing for a while. I don't have the experience, and I also don't have the mindset for it. So it's a different thing.
Would you recommend any sort of style as a teacher or weapon defense with?
Somebody really wanted to know. It would depend, after meeting especially with a youngster. I mean, kids your age have a better idea of who they are and what they want to do. But with youngsters, I would like to spend some time, an hour or 2 with a kid. Their parents can be there or not. The parents have to be there, but see what they like to do, how they like to play, how physically adept they are. If a child is little and slight, I would be very reluctant to put a saber in their hands. I'd be real reluctant to put an epee in their hands. It's just too heavy a weapon. Youngsters whose personality is saber, I'll start them on plastic. I've got plastic blades, plastic masks. That's much safer. It's more easy to wield. You can learn the moves. You can learn the footwork without putting the stress on the body. But if somebody says, "What do you think?" and then I'll tell them. We had a father, a family come. Very short period of time, unfortunately. The dad turned out to be, they were all from Turkey. Dad had been on the junior world team for Turkey, he was great fun to fence. Mom had been a foil fencer for Turkey, and their son was 7, and because Mom was coming to fence foil, they had their son fence foil, start in foil as well. He was definitely a saber personality, definitely. He was a charge him, go get him, run down the strip at you, come hell or high water personality. But he was also very tiny, so a foil was an appropriate way to start him. But he should have migrated into saber at some point, because he simply didn't have the patience for it.
Do you think that, what would be a good age to get start fencing with peers? Same age?
I'm perfectly fine with 8-year-olds. 7-year-olds, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, I would be very reluctant to start them with anybody other than other 5, 6, 7-year-olds. Our club has a huge variance in age, and there are certain youngsters whose personality will get and have gotten overwhelmed, which is why I have developed and started the youth kids, which is I limited to 12 and under, because I knew I had at least 6 at the time youngsters who, if you threw them into our big group, would have just drowned. And most of them ended up dropping out eventually anyways, but they all stayed well over a year until they hit most of them hit middle school, and they said, oh, well, I can go do chess club, and I can do this club and that club. So middle school, and real life steps in, and interests change, and kids change. But had we thrown them straight into do the 5 intro lesson and thrown them straight into the big group, they would have left within months because it was overwhelming. So I'm a little more tuned into that, I think, mostly also because I have grandchildren and 3 grandchildren, 3 totally different personalities. Emily I could throw into a large group. Grayson, not. Mason, yes. He's a bull in a china shop. Gray is a very cautious, analytical youngster. He's 3. He would not thrive until he was more self-assured. Emily is pretty self-assured, but she'd be size-wise. She's tall but very cute. So size-wise, she'd get overwhelmed. So it depends on the kids.
Now, speaking of middle schoolers, do you think that some people might stick with fencing, or do more fencing, or possibly even get into fencing if it was offered as either a club or a sport at their high school or middle school?
Yes. However, the difficulties in doing so are overwhelming. The state of New Jersey has a very active school fencing program, and you can see that the results of that by the number of clubs up and down New Jersey. Is far more obviously in the northern part of New Jersey where the population is heavy, but there is fencing in the schools in New Jersey, and the number of high-level clubs in New Jersey is overwhelming. The difficulty in introducing fencing in a high school or middle school scenario is number of qualified teachers or coaches are very few and far between. Which again you can see looking at the number of clubs in the Capital District. There are 2. That's it.
Beaches.
Yes, CDFS and Beaches. Those are the only 2 saber fencing clubs including Poughkeepsie now, because Poughkeepsie is closed. Poughkeepsie Phoenix only does épée now. So in a 150-mile radius, this is it. There is a club in Pioneer Valley. That's 100 miles away. So that's in Massachusetts. Phoenix was down in Poughkeepsie. They now only do épée. A very fine épée program. Eric Soika has developed some really top-notch épée fencers. But there aren't any. There simply aren't. There's an épée club in Amsterdam. There are no foil clubs at all anymore.
No exclusively foil clubs?
Nope, not at all. So difficulty, first and foremost, who's going to teach? And then the next problem is equipment. Where are you going to get the equipment? You're going to ask the kids to buy it? That's kind of not going to happen. This mask is not bad. This mask is about $95. This mask, which is a Leon Paul, is $365. That's just the mask. The weapon, a complete weapon, you can get one with a cheap blade, the blade being the metal part, as opposed to the entire weapon. It's going to set you back about $45. You put a semi-decent blade in, like I just built for you, you're looking at $58, $60 per weapon. That's not counting your wires. That's not counting your $65 jacket, your $20 plastron, your underarm, or your electric scoring equipment. $500 for the box, and $30, $40 a piece for the wires.
The wires to the thing, or the wires for the jacket?
The wires from the reels to your scoring wires. Those wires. Then your own wires, your electric wires. Mass cord is, if you don't buy mine, don't have to present it by hand. Mass cords are $12 to $15, and your body cords are $20 to $30 a piece. And those, so you either have to be able to fix them or buy new ones. So it's a cost issue, you know. And unlike football, where you've got sports clubs supporting you, blah, 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 blah. It's a cost issue. And that's just to play.
For fun.
For play, for fun. Now, softball, for example, when you're just playing for fun, you can get a $40 bat. When you're playing for real, you get a $400 bat. There is no $40 bat in your reels in fencing. It just isn't. So it's a cost issue, but mostly it's a teaching issue. I mean, you can get away dry without electric.
Mm-hmm. It should bring it down a few $100s, right?
Oh, it brings down a lot, because again, your mask is $85.90. You can get away with this mask, which is a all weapons mask. It is not electric. Your jacket, $65. Your plastron, $20. Your weapon is again $45 to $60. You can get away with that stuff. You can't get away without the mask completely. You've got to have it. You can't, but without a teacher, and most teachers I know aren't going to do it for free, which is something you ran into.
Teachers cost money.
Teachers cost money.
Also, what I want to do is I want to ask if you could show us these weapons, if you could pick
Okay.
them.
So,
Could you tell us a little bit about the gear itself, masks and blades?
okay, so we have two types of masks right now. One is for sabers, is for electric. This is a practice mask for all three weapons, or the full-time mask for an epee. The difference between this and a foil mask for competition is there is a section of what is called the bib that has lame metallic fabric from here down, because this is part of the target and this is not. And epee, because the whole body's a target, it don't matter. This is a saber mask. As you can see, it's silver and shiny. That is because it must conduct. The base of your head is part of the target area. Therefore, it must complete a circuit and must be metallic. The bib, these masks are designed for safety. There was an unfortunate incident in the 1980s, where a blade broke, perforated a mask, and the fencer died. It was very unfortunate. As a result, the technology in masks have changed so that the wire mesh is now constantly tested. If you go to a tournament and they test your mask with what's called a punch test and it fails, your mask is immediately destroyed because it is no longer safe to keep you alive. For saber, it's a practice glove. For foil and epee, this is a valid glove. The tips on foil and epees are quite different than the saber. The reason this is not a valid glove anymore is the fabric of the glove is is not 800 Newton, which is the perforation strength of the fabric. This is a saber glove. It has a metallic cuff. This is an FIE saber glove. So this fabric is rated to 800 Newton perforation, ideally to keep you from having your palm lanced, which is why they made that rule change. Apparently they were having rather significant hand injuries where the blade hits the palm of the hand and the glove didn't stop it. So that rule has changed. The reason it's not an issue in epee and foil is the nature of the tip. This is a foil. It's much lighter than, sorry, too bad I'm cutting. It's much lighter than an epee blade, especially down at the base. It's also very flexible, but it has a plunger on the end, and this plunger is spring-loaded and is flat-tipped. The plunger on a foil does not take much effort to press. The plunger on an epee takes significantly more pressure because, and that is actually measured. Every time you go to an event, they will take on an epee a weight and put it on. That plunger must hold that weight before it releases. And that is the amount of pressure it takes to perforate human skin. So again, epee being like dueling is more realistic. And foil, because it's simply teaching how to not die, the idea is simply to create the touch. You can have two different types of grips in epee and foil. This is called a pistol grip. I do not have the straight grip, which is called a French grip. The bell, which is this part, or the guard, is much smaller on a foil because your arm is not a target. None of your arms are targets, so only body. So you're only just protecting your hands from getting injured, whereas the bell on an epee is significant, almost twice as big and much more rounded, so your hand is protected. The whole idea is that when you're like this, your arm can literally hide behind the bell of the guard. The electronics are a little bit different. One breaks a circuit, the other makes a circuit, but I don't know which one's which because I don't play that game. Saber has no electrics in the blade itself because the whole blade is part of the weapon. On epee and foil, only the tip. So if I touch you with the side of the blade, doesn't make any difference whether it's the side or the tip. It completes the circuit against your jacket or your mask. The guard is designed to protect your hand. It has, all three weapons have what's called a socket, which is where your electrical system plugs in. You will not get shocked if your electrical system has a break in it. It's kind of akin to those youngsters out there who touch their tongue on a D-volt battery, that kind of buzz. That's kind of the same thing. You're going to get that little buzz, and that's it. Even I've had broken wires in my lame collar, and it kind of tingles. It's annoying, but it won't hurt you. You sit there and hold on to it, it won't hurt you. All grips on sabers are straight, because there's only one way to hold a saber. You can hold it close or far, it doesn't matter, but there's only one way to hold a saber. And it does look like a cavalry saber guard, because again, you don't want to have your fingers cracked. Little story about rules. Those the two of the three weapons. I forgot to bring the epee on. I do have an epee. I do play it when it's a
More than foil.
About the same. I don't play very often because by the time I'm done teaching on Thursday nights, the last thing I'm going to do is stay another hour and play. And usually the epee guys go home. I did tell Ben that I would stay and start playing because Eliza's graduating and he's on the stride. I figure I better learn. but because primary differences. Okay.
Do you,
Okay, I'm sorry.
do you think that you might be interested in teaching if there was a pre-established club with?
No. And I'll tell you why. I'll be 70 years old in August. I have grandchildren. I have a husband who's 77 years older than I am. It's that level of flexibility I'm not really willing to lose anymore. That's why I closed my business. So I like teaching the way I'm doing it right now. I can take students when I want to. If I don't want to take any more students, I can say no. I had at one point considered what will happen when Mark retires, if he retires. If something would happen to Mark, that this was the only way to keep the club open, I would take over the club if I had to. Do I want to? No.
Do you think someone else, maybe Mike, would take over the club?
I can't speak for Mike. I don't know. I know that right now, Mike's a few years younger than I am, so he's got a few more years to work. He might, once he's retired, or he might do it in tandem with somebody else. I can't speak for him, though. I don't know. And I don't know anybody who has that level of dedication to the sport and the free time. Otto Schwartz, who fences at Hay, used to run clubs, and he will not do it anymore. He also doesn't have the free time either. James McClyman, who ran the foil group when I started and ran it up until 3 years ago. He's a judge. And once his daughters got out of school, he was done. So it's a lot. It's very demanding, and the USFA does not make it any easier. The costs keep going up. The insurance costs keep going up. The compliance is becoming more and more annoying. For example, because Mike and I and Mark interact with young people, that is you included, we are required by USFA to take and pass safe sport training. We are required to have a background check. Technically, if I were to coach, list myself as a coach, and also then go to tournaments as a coach, I also now have to take coaching certification, which is not so much skill set as it is social norms, bullying, how to counteract bullying, how to deal with the big thing with safe sport is sex abuse and grooming and bullying, stuff like that. It's more of a continuation of that. There is also some coaching skills supposedly that it involves. I haven't looked at the course completely, but I refuse to do it. And USFA is making that kind of mandate more and more difficult for clubs and coaches, and the insurance. The insurance has gone through the roof. And I know a number of clubs now, some down in South Jersey, in Philadelphia area, a couple clubs that I know of that are friends with Milos, who is the club owner at Delaware Valley in Philadelphia. They refuse to be part of it anymore, and they've withdrawn their membership from the USFA. They'll carry their own private insurance through private carrier, because USFA has made it so difficult and so expensive that it's prohibitive for small clubs. For the big clubs like down in the city, you've got my mind's blank. Tim Morehouse has 3. Fencers Club down in New York City. There's two more. I just pulled blanks. But Bergen and New Jersey, NJFA, New Jersey Fencing Alliance. Those clubs are brick and mortar. They've got their own buildings. They've got literally dozens and dozens and dozens of students. They've got 3, 4, 5 coaches on staff. Those guys can pull it off. But the little clubs like us, like Delaware Valley, we can't pull it off. It's just prohibitive. So, yeah, that's the business end of life that unfortunately is making it very difficult for small clubs.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about?
Yeah, one of the things that I find just really remarkable about fencing is the fact that you can do it at any age. I mean, one of my good acquaintances is Jeanette Starks Faulkner. She is my age. She is a foilist and a saber fencer. She has her own club over in Connecticut. She missed going to the Olympics as a college student because she developed food allergies that basically made her so sick she couldn't compete. And at that time, the way you got onto the Olympic teams and into the Olympics as a foil fencer in the this was in the early mid-70s, was you won the NCAAs. She lost because she was so sick. She's little anyways, but she had dropped down to like 80 pounds, 85 pounds because of food allergies. Anyways, long story short, she, when her mother-in-law and her stepmom were still alive, they were both walking with walkers. And one day she took them into her living room, gave them each a foil, showed them how to hit each other, put a mask on them, let them go at it. They fenced each other for 45 minutes and never touched their walker. That to me is an amazing thing, a statement about the universal appeal and benefits of fencing. But how many sports can that happen in? So anyways, that was it.
It's been a pleasure, Kim. Thank you.
Thanks, Oz. It's been a great.
Of course, what's a school without its students? Let's go hear some words from the students at CDFS. What do you like about Capital District fencing?
It's been great for me. I've been doing it for 13 years now, and I came because my daughter wanted to try it out, and I was actually diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and needed to find a way to get exercise. I've never been a gym guy. I always wanted some competitive sport, and I brought her for about 3 months, and I kept thinking, that looks like fun, and I should try it, and I did, and 13 years later, here I am teaching new students, so still having a great time with it.
I've been fencing here for a while now, for about 6 years, and I think it's a very positive and supportive area to fence. It's really cool seeing all people of all ages fence together in the same room, and they've been also been really supportive of me going competitive and stuff.
Honestly, I've been fencing here for like a little bit over a year and 2 months, and it sounds kind of corny, but it is like family. I love reffing. I love helping the kids out and stuff like that. If I like get an E or a D like within like 10 years, that's fine. But really, it's just about helping everyone out and socializing the kids.
I really like that the coaches really take your best interests at hand, and they really help you reach your goals. And the people are really kind.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. If you're interested in getting on this fencing fun, I suggest you go contact Mark at fencingforall.com, where you can find his email and phone number to get further information on joining this amazing place. But for now, that's all. Fencing for all.